You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom! That's right, guys. It's another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And
Daniel Paddington Wheatley.
Daniel Paddington Wheatley? That's a very, very fancy name. I was not expecting that, Keith. Is this a new persona?
I wasn't expecting it either.
Well, Daniel, thank you for joining us this evening. We're so happy to have you here. Hopefully you'll bring us some good movie news or good movie discussion.
Please
I mean,
do.
that's all of our special guests have to bring a review onto this show. I hope you brought one. Have you?
No, he's gone. I don't know. I guess you scared him.
Man, it's been a while since you had one of those episodes.
He said, oh, crap, I got to have a review, and he left.
I wish, there's a lot of situations where that's happened to me, and I wish I could just escape. Just push the eject button
I
and go.
want to do that now. Like, somebody, come up to you and, ask you, something, and you're just, all of a sudden start acting like somebody else. It's like, wait, what's going on here?
What? Like, I have multiple personalities.
Yeah, with Keith, you really never know what you're going to get.
It's like, sir.
That's true.
It's like, Did you just put the candy bar in your pocket without paying it? Hi, my name's Gregory.
I haven't an idea what you're talking about. I don't like chocolate. I'm allergic.
I don't know how I got here.
Or just you're in the middle of a school test, and all of a sudden it's like, what am I doing here?
No, that's when you just
this isn't what I was.
Out, you flip the desk over and start going crazy. Like, what's wrong? What's wrong? It's just like, I don't know where I am.
It's like, just come up with a random story.
I don't know. I like chaos.
Sometimes. Sean is just completely lost in all
I
of
am.
this.
I'm just too busy reading.
just like chaos.
Are you reading the headlines from this week, Sean?
No, I'm reading some movie quotes.
Movie quotes.
Oh, well.
Oh.
This movie here that we're reviewing this
we
week
definitely have some.
has a massive amount
That's
of
what I was
famous
actually looking
movie
up.
quotes.
I'm trying to count how many.
Oh, there's
really
tons.
Memorable
big ones,
quotes
yeah.
are from Casablanca.
In fact, I mentioned it in my review. So if we want to get that rolling, we can hear my review of Casablanca.
Here it is.
There have been many iconic Best Picture winners through the years, and many considered to be the foundation upon which many modern movies are created. As we ventured through the earliest years of Oscar winners, it's been unfortunate to discover quite a few of these golden era films have not lived up to their reputation or the title of Best Picture. This week's review of the 16th Best Picture winner, however, showcases a film whose name and reputation match its quality. This is Casablanca. Starring the legendary Humphrey Bogart opposite of Ingrid Bergman and taking place in Casablanca, Morocco, then a protectorate of France during the occupation of France in World War II, Casablanca was a romantic war drama that has held its place as one of the most esteemed films to come out of Hollywood. Bogart as Rick Blaine, the disillusioned American club owner, perfectly plays the cynic whose past pain has caused him to withdraw from the values he once held, though he finds no matter how hard he tries, he cannot truly run away from them. When Ilsa Lund, a past love portrayed by Bergman, walks back into his life, seeking help escaping Morocco with her husband, Victor Laszlo, a prominent Czech resistance leader fighting the German forces, Rick is forced to re-examine his feelings and beliefs. Filled with iconic scenes and famous lines still parodied, referenced, and quoted till this day, Casablanca is amongst one of the finest films to win Best Picture up until this point. Kept at a steady pace with a runtime shy of 2 hours, Casablanca doesn't pad its story with unnecessary exposition or plot points shoehorned in to make it feel grander than it already is. The tension between Rick, the Vichy French government ruling at the time, and the German forces pulling the strings is well done, creating an awareness of the war and the Germans' occupation of France without actually showcasing those events themselves. Bogart and Bergman have excellent chemistry with a fantastic supporting cast. Though their romance was believable, the triangle between them and Laszlo doesn't feel as fleshed out as to believe the choice between the men is completely believable. The movie does excel with its supporting characters being unique and colorful, adding to the atmosphere and relatability of the club's employees and patrons. The film also excellently catches your emotions, spurring on its viewers to remember that fighting evil is always worth it. Casablanca may not be flawless, but is definitely worth its clout. I give Casablanca 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Wow, 3.5 out of 4 stars. Another one at 3.5.
delicious.
Can y'all believe it?
This was a terrific movie, well, and it is, not just was. I mean, I definitely...
You still agree?
Yeah, I
with your
definitely
score?
still agree. This is one that 100% deserves like the reputation it has,
I agree.
as opposed to many of the other ones we've reviewed that definitely do not deserve that title of Best Picture. I mean,
Right.
It deserves Best Picture. It deserves to be as highly acclaimed as it is. Casablanca is just very excellently written, and the story, it grips you. I love the whole like type of espionage and during the German occupation of France, and how you don't, again, it's another movie like Mrs. Miniver where you don't actually see all of the war, but you get enough of what's going on from like having the
feel it,
German,
though.
you can
Yeah.
feel it
Yes.
every moment.
Yeah.
Having like, the Germans constantly there over everybody's shoulders, like even though like technically they're not the ones that are in charge of Casablanca, it's Claude Rains' character is the technical leader, but he's still answering to the Germans. He
Well, he kind of answers to
yeah.
anyone.
He
who
says,
has
yeah,
the
true.
best, you know.
He says multiple times throughout the movie, it's like, well, I'm the one in charge, but ultimately he does, what he's told to do.
Well, I was going to say, which I
Yeah.
guess we'll get into it when we're kind of exploring
Yeah,
a little
it's
bit
like
more
a good
about the
Frenchman.
characters.
Yeah.
Touche, absolutely. But no, it's funny because actually this past weekend I was visiting with my parents and we were talking about all the movie reviews that we've done
Yeah.
with all these classics, and I was found out one of my dad's favorite from this era was Mrs. Miniver, which we did last
Yeah.
week. And so I was talking about how Casablanca is this one coming up, and they were actually all like, yeah, it's good, but it's not amazing.
I
Really?
disagree.
Well, here's the weird thing is I don't know if I thought the same exact thing, but I had only seen it once before.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm wondering how long it has been since they've seen it.
Yeah.
And maybe they still hold that same opinion, but I also thought the same thing as you all. I thought from the moment that I started watching it, the one thing that this has done the best so far out of all the Best Picture winners is the pacing.
Yes.
Yeah.
This did not let up from the moment. And the best part about it is that it literally is a sub 2 hour film.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it gets everything that it needs to accomplish in that 2 hour time
Well, I just
frame.
want to say, like, its story structure feels more like a modern, like, I mean,
Yes.
and like,
Yeah.
I don't knock the older films for their story structure simply because like they hadn't developed that style of story structure. But this is the first Best Picture art winner I've seen
That helped cultivate it.
That has, yeah. Like
For me,
that,
it was one of the first ones that we've reviewed that got the flashback right.
Yeah.
When it went into the
Yes. Yep.
dreamy, foggy, and then it come out into the flashback, and I'm like, okay, now we have a flashback at the right time in the film, and not like every 10 minutes. And it wasn't too long.
Yeah.
It was just enough to give you the idea
Yeah.
that these people have a past together, and then it comes right back into it. And the way that they shot it, going out from him sitting there thinking, and then when he gets on the train and the steam from the train fills the
Yes.
view,
Yeah,
and
I
then
love
it
that.
turns into the fog of his coming out of the
Yeah.
dreams, and that was fantastic.
Yeah. Really, I mean, it really started to, like you were kind of alluding to, Keith, it just started bringing in these touches that we see now in the modern era.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's nice to see a film. Because here's the thing. This is the Best Picture winner. We're only really viewing those. I mean, there's probably other films
And
we've seen
I know
from
there are
this
films
era.
before this
Yes.
that have a more modern feel too, but it was the first like Best Picture winner to finally have that.
For it
that,
to
yeah.
finally cement a film that I believe does not only deserve that title, but is one that can truly hold up with today's classics. And you could easily sit there and see how so many films from today draw from touches in this film. And I just really do love the simplistic. Well, it's simple but not simplistic. It's a simple natured story in terms of this love, this
Triangle
tragic
almost.
love triangle.
But it's very layered,
Right.
yeah.
But it is layered. And I will say the one fault that I had with the film was actually and granted, I don't know why. Maybe I felt this way only because of all the other films we've seen having been the long run times. I was actually kind of yearning for a little bit
more.
more
Yeah.
when they went to the flashback, and I wanted to see a little bit more of how they fell in love, because it was really
It's quick.
It was quick
Yeah.
and it was cliche.
Yeah.
It was very much a, you don't really see how they meet, which is fine, but it picks up right in the middle of their that little part of it did kind of hurt, I think, somewhat for me, especially when you get to the later parts of the film and you get to the plot development that happens in that later part of the film,
Right.
because it kind of made it a little bit harder to believe.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't
how that becomes a crutch.
See, I didn't mind like the flashback. I thought that was enough. Like I believed like they had this love. For me, I just didn't get enough of like her and Laszlo's relationship for me to believe there to be a real love triangle. Like I feel like I believed that her and Humphrey Bogart's character were in love, but I didn't feel a sense that like obviously like she talked about loving her husband, but I didn't feel like there was enough of a relationship there for her to feel conflicted enough about, do I stay with Laszlo or do I go with Bogey?
Well, even in the dream or the flashback, you see her and Bogart, you see them kiss several times.
Yeah.
And then later on, when it introduces her actual husband, they don't ever kiss until nearly the end of the movie. And there's many times where you feel like they're going to, and it's almost like she evades the situation, or they both do. So it kind of breaks up that idea that they ever really had the same kind of romance that her and Bogart
kind
did.
of become, I guess, more clear in the end as to
Why
they don't have
yeah.
that connection.
Yeah.
But I agree. I almost, truth be told, what I would like. I could say this. I don't want to touch it's not an untouchable film, but I would say one thing I would have liked to have seen is through their relationship, maybe between her. One of the ways in which she could really warm up to Bogey's character would be of her telling her or him about her loss of Laszlo, because at the time, when you pick up,
she thinks he is dead.
You think, okay, well, yeah, she's at a great time of loss, and now here's this man to pick her up and care for her and tend to her needs. And so I'm sitting here thinking, well, that would have been a great touch to sense her connection to Laszlo through him, so that he feels like he's really filling this void, and then you also understand her relationship with Laszlo. But I agree. I think by the end of the film, what was hard for me is, I'm probably going to spoil a little bit. So if you haven't seen a 1940s Casablanca,
I don't care about spoilers.
But the fact is one thing I really was not a huge fan of was at the end when she caters back to, Bogart's character, and she's just like, I do love you, and and it's like 5 seconds ago she was pointing a gun at him, and it's like I just felt like the sudden dynamic twist is I'm like, okay, I don't believe her. I feel like she's still only doing this to get the papers, and it's not until she's about to leave on the plane, that with Laszlo and he's willing to sacrifice himself, that I felt any real true endearment towards him, which was fine. I just felt like, again, for the amount of pacing that they do in this movie, and it's done so well in just keeping you involved and actually keeping the story and the motive moving, I felt like I wanted more from their relationship and a little bit more from, the love and the loss aspect of the film.
So what did you give the film?
I actually ended up giving it 3.5. Okay. So I didn't come down too much. Okay. Because I was still entertained greatly by the film.
I gave it 3.5, and I was very close to giving it 4. I do actually like it. I mean, I gave Mrs. Miniver 3.5, but I do actually like Casablanca better, way better. But yeah, I must like I said, I would have maybe given it that 4 if I had just gotten a little bit more of like that relationship with Laszlo, because like for him to be such a significant plot point and to be this important character who has to live to fight the good fight, I just felt like he was almost kind of a background character, and even some of the other supporting cast I felt like were more intriguing, because that's one thing about this movie I loved even more than other Best Picture winners is I felt like even the smallest characters were very unique and interesting.
Right at the beginning, the guy, and I've seen him in other movies, the guy that comes in to the club, and ends up getting shot at the very beginning.
Yes.
Like he's been in other films as he's gotten older that I've recognized him from.
I'm not sure. Keith,
I can't really think of his name.
Yeah, he's a German actor. His first film was M, which is a messed up movie. It's really good. And I'm trying to let me pull up his name because I know who you're talking about. And I just can't
see. And you all are probably going to disagree.
The guy that's kind of like his
Peter Lorre, I believe, is who you're talking about. The guy that gets arrested in the club.
Yes,
Peter Lorre. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff.
But even the fat guy or whatever that plays his like barkeep or whatever, the guy that's
the
kinda
one
like
that's
his
trying
assistant.
to also get trying to buy Rick's place.
Right,
No, no,
yeah.
no,
not that guy.
Oh,
that
okay.
guy's
Yeah.
that's the guy that
I'm talking
starred
about
with
the guy that
yeah.
almost looked like Alfred Hitchcock a little bit.
Yeah, I know who you're
he
talking
was.
about. The guy that he's like,
I
hey,
just
you
can't think of
you
the
need to
dude's
turn the
name.
lights out, and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
he always does that. He said
Yeah.
he forgot tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved
But
his
him and the
character.
piano
did too.
player, like
He was-
all of those
Oh, I
characters
loved,
were
I
so
loved Sam.
likable. Yeah.
Sam was great.
This movie was one of the first movies, and I gave it 4. By the way, it's
Oh,
the
wow.
first
Nice.
one that
Wow.
I've given 4.
Nice. Yeah.
It was by far, out of all the ones we've seen so far, the best that I've seen.
Yes.
And I had never seen it before. I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but never watched it all the way through. And for a movie that was made in its time, and yes, it's another movie that goes into, the war was going on.
Yeah.
So almost every movie of this time period has something to do with the wars that were going on. But that aside, it was the best acting that I have seen in any of the
definitely.
movies.
Well, it did.
And
100%. Yeah.
It did something that what I think so many of the others were trying to do with a load of characters, and especially in the shorter amount of time, it still baffles me. But with how many characters there are in this film, each one of them felt like they had their own personality,
Right.
and they felt like they had, their own story structure. And it's like you don't need to go into these huge, grandiose, like, I mean, like Cavalcade and. Oh gosh, what was the other one? Cimarron. They have these huge, grandiose epics with all these players, and there's really only one that they really pay enough attention to even develop, and even it's terrible.
Well, I felt,
Whereas
go
this
ahead,
one, I
sorry.
just felt like was fantastic in that regard.
Yeah.
But no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the cinematography wasn't like anything to rave about, but I really did feel like the tight shots that they had on the main characters were what drove the emotion for me.
Yeah.
Because there were so many moments in some of these older movies where they choose a wider shot of 2 or 3 people in a room talking instead of zooming in on their faces. And this movie focused a lot on their faces. And when you see Bogart sitting at the bar and it's just him with his hands folded and him like getting ready to say something and then stopping himself when he's drinking and listening to the music play, like the emotion in his face you can actually see.
Yes.
And I felt like this was the first movie that really showed me those kind of tight personal shots.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's
And-
what drove
And
me
another
to
thing that
feel
goes
something.
along with the acting and the casting in general is this is the first film where like they have like people who aren't white English characters that actually have authentic accents or actually have authentic actors that were of the nomination that like they were portraying. Like you see like All Quiet on the Western Front. There's a bunch of white British people playing Germans. And this one the Germans were played by like some Germans and they had German accents and the Moroccans had Moroccan accents. So I was like, okay, finally a movie with different cultures where they're not just speaking like plain English. Like it actually seems
They actually
authentic.
try to be a little bit more cultured and understanding.
And it
of,
wasn't
like,
always perfect,
it adds
but
to the
still,
authenticity of it. And I agree. I mean, it's like one thing I loved about the cinematography was, not so much all of the, I would say, daytime scenes, but every time it used shadows and silhouettes, it was fantastic.
The lighting on their faces, just to light the right part of their face for that moment.
And
was
that, again,
amazing.
and I mean, you have the lighting in tune with, how close it is, all the tight shots.
Yep.
And again, it starts to show you, things that you see in modern films.
Well, even towards the beginning, there was a shot where Rick is walking up and he kind of goes up into his office for a minute, and he goes off screen, and all you see is his shadow.
Yeah.
And they have that spotlight shining so that you can see him in the other room doing what he's doing, but he's not really in the shot. And I really like that. I'm like, that's a great use of lighting and camera technique.
They did a lot of showing and not telling, which is definitely very early movies that we've reviewed because they were coming off of the silent era and all this. They did a lot of like telling you what's going on rather than just simply show you on film. And this movie definitely mastered that art of like giving you visual cues without having to say, now this is what we're doing right now.
Right. Or here we're gonna go now to this place and we're gonna exactly. I mean, the opening scene with just the map was enough simplistic way, a very simple way of showing.
I was getting ready to say with the map, you just reminded me of one of the points I wanted to talk about was this movie had, and I don't know what it was about it, but it felt Indiana Jones to me.
Yeah.
And the map scene
Well, I
felt
think
that way, and even
I
there's
think some of the
scenes
Moroccan
in the
scene,
the
but
Moroccan scenes reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
But I think that
and-
goes to show you how authentic it felt, was the fact that you felt like you were like over it, like it felt like it was actually in
Yes.
Morocco. It wasn't
Yeah.
on some sound
Well, and
stage.
I think it also shows you it's like that's probably
Where
this kind
some-
of. I was gonna say where
Yeah.
Indiana Jones got a look and feel.
Yeah.
It got a look and feel from a movie like this
Yeah.
because of its
Yeah.
iconic nature and how it felt when you saw it, and
Yeah.
and when those people saw it.
Yeah, when they
before
were walking
made
through,
Indiana Jones.
I will be. Yeah, when they were walking through the streets at the beginning and stuff, I had the same feel. I was
yeah,
like, yeah, this
it
is
was
like,
very
yeah,
much like when he's
Yeah.
looking for
like in the market.
Yeah,
he's
in the
looking
market
See,
for
and I
stuff,
immediately
yeah.
I thought of
Yeah.
Aladdin. I don't.
I
I don't know
mean,
why. but
That
I
works
did.
too, but yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Sean. Like when he was
Indiana
going through it, I
Jones.
thought Indiana Jones.
Yeah, especially when he's like in his white suit and he's got his hat on.
Yes.
It reminded me of him at the beginning of the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Although
When
I will
but he's
say,
in China in that one. But
the one thing I hated though about the street scene, and I thought it was just, it wouldn't have been as bad, I guess, back then. Actually, it kind of brings up two scenes. The first one is the guy gets shot in the street right before we go into Rick's place, and I didn't like it. I thought it was a little. It wasn't that I thought it was hokey. I was like, I didn't see a gunshot wound. I know you attest, Keith, that
there was a hole.
one.
There was no blood, but there was
Yeah.
a hole.
I did not see a hole. I don't remember seeing a hole.
I think I did.
I thought he just fell down dead. But again, I could maybe be mistaken. And then again, at the end of the film,
Yeah, that
when
one was bad.
Bogart
Yeah,
pulls
the-
a gun out of his hand
Yeah.
or out of his pocket, and he shoots him. And I was just like, again, I know we're used to seeing more realistic, but also
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
over the top, blood and violence and gore. But it's not that I needed that. I just wanted something a little bit more believable than he shoots him once and he falls down. And
The way he
Yeah,
felt, like
yeah.
I
him
thought that was a
shooting him-
little bit-
him shooting him once and him dying didn't bother me, but the way he fell, he was just
yes.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
But I will say
he
Rick
just
shot
slow-
first.
Yes, he did.
Rick shot first.
But
in
yeah,
this
he
one.
was just this slow, like just I'm just gonna lay down now.
Yeah. I'm taking
Yeah.
a dirt nap.
Yes.
If there's one gripe that I had with the movie, it was the scene where they're playing the music and the Germans are singing and then the French get
I love
together.
that scene.
Well, I
Are
loved
you
it at the
serious?
beginning.
Yeah, I loved it.
But I didn't like that they went through and played like the whole song. And you've got this lady that's like
Yeah.
supposed to be playing the guitar, and she's not
She's
even
not.
touching
Yeah.
the strings on the.
Yeah.
It seemed very fake to me.
I don't know. That
but
one
that
got me like,
was
yeah,
it did
you
get
give
me
it to the
pumped. But then I
Germans.
felt like okay, you didn't have to play the whole song.
that was
but
one where
I liked how the Germans like sat down and in shame and kind of like they were outdone.
Yeah.
Well, I love the fact that it was like at the end, it showed you what German Nazis would really do, and it was like we're going to shut this place down.
They're like,
Yeah.
you
and I
don't
was like,
us?
that's,
Too bad.
that's what I loved. Is
Yeah.
I was like, this is exactly what
Yeah,
would
find
happen.
a reason to close it and
right.
all
He
of
said,
that.
on what grounds? I just discovered there's gambling in here.
Yeah. Well, that guy's character
Claude
was
Rains.
awesome because he
Yes.
was such a flip flopper. I
Yes.
told Amelia we couldn't figure out whether he was going to be a good guy or a
Right,
bad guy.
yeah.
Which I
And-
loved.
Yeah.
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 And
He
not
was
only that, but
excellent,
I think
yeah.
too, one thing I loved was you don't really get the reflection of who he is until the end of the film because he keeps taking that jab
Yes.
at Bogart the whole
Yeah,
time about you're such a sympathetic person.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
I know who you really are, and Bogey kind of plays
then
it
he
off.
covers for him.
But then he covers
Yeah.
for him, and it's like, okay, you can see him kind of looking up to Bogart in
Yeah.
that way of like, okay, I know your real heart, and I want to be that too.
Well, it's
And,
like-
and I like
I
that. It
love
was a
that-
good, well-rounded way to wrap up
Yeah.
his character
Yeah,
too.
I love the scene when he's like describing him, and he's like, "Well, Rick is the kind of man that if I were a woman, I would very much be pursuing." Him. And I'm just sitting there like Claude Rains. I thought was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole movie.
Oh yeah,
I loved
absolutely.
If there's anything that put it over the top for me to give it 4 stars, it was the way the film ended because I thought I had it figured out.
Yeah.
And me and my wife were talking about it, and I was saying, the one guy, Laszlo, he's going to end up, when he calls him and wants to meet, or Rick wants to meet with him, I thought for sure he was going to offer him the letters if he would let the woman go. And you were going to finally see that the guy's in love more with the cause than he is with the girl.
Yeah.
And he's going to go off on the plane, and they're going to be together. And I really expected that to happen. Like I said, I'd never seen it before.
Right.
So at the end of the film, to see him basically sacrifice his love for her so that they can both go and him stay behind,
is what makes it
because
so
he's kind of a
timeless.
wild card.
Well,
I
and
mean,
he's-
he is kind of an untamable kind
But
of
that's what
guy.
because he's going off
and
to
that
fight
was
the fight now too.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and that I appreciated the ending for not giving me what I wanted.
Yeah.
For
Yes.
not, it surprised me. I was not
Yes.
expecting that.
I agree. I
And
mean,
that's
all
when
the-
I was just like, this is a great movie.
Yeah.
That was like I told Brandon I loved the line when Laszlo was looking at me. He's like, "Welcome back to the fight. I know our side's going to win now." And
Yeah.
I love that because it's
Yeah.
like now that Rick's back in the battle,
This
like
is the start of a beautiful
Yeah.
friendship.
Yes,
Yeah.
one of the all-time classic
yeah,
lines.
yeah.
But I agree. I also was kind of miffed by. I didn't understand how they were going to get to that point. I thought Bogey might also honestly like. I've seen the end before.
Either that or
you know,
Laszlo would die
right?
somehow. and they would-
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And that's what I thought was going to happen. But I don't know. I thought overall it was like I
Great
it
movie.
fulfilled
I thought it
my
was a fantastic
it
movie.
exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
All right, guys, man, that's such a good way to
That's
It's-
one I was actually excited to talk about.
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
really liked it.
which is awesome.
It's been a very long time since we started this Best Picture winner reviewing that we've had one. I think that like has just been that solid because so many of them have just been, Cimarron, The Great Seinfeld.
Hit and misses, hit and misses. All right, guys, are we ready to move on to our headlines?
Yes, please.
I think
Let's
so.
do it. That's right. We finally have an intro. For
That's
that.
new.
That is new.
You saw
right.
it here. Our new headlines and
That's right. Thankfully, now we have something that lets people know we're transitioning to a new
Now-
topic.
Where did we first
didn't know
hear
where you
about
were going.
this?
Your
this-
camera's way off.
transitioning, I was like,
I don't know
what?
That's
how it's.
because I leaned over this
Oh,
way.
okay. Well,
I'm
no,
usually
it's
right
still.
here.
I don't know. I think it. Yeah, there it is. That's it. That's the view.
We never
Oh,
can get
nope.
it right.
It's
know
still
what you're
off. I think it.
Who are you talking to?
No,
Him or
it got
me?
Who are
hit.
you talking to?
Keith.
Oh,
Hold on.
Oh
okay.
my god.
There it is.
Oh,
It got
Oh.
hit
much better.
because they're easy to turn. That's all it is.
That's
They're easy to
probably-
smack. There it is.
got
It's
hit.
back to normal
It
now.
got hit.
But what were you saying, Keith? You were mentioning something just before.
Oh, I said this week's headline. How did we get a hold of this headline?
You know, I'm glad
Somebody
you
sent
brought
us
that
an
up.
Email, didn't
yeah,
they?
we got an
Wait, what?
email.
An email? Does anybody know what our email is?
What is it?
I don't know. We haven't used no one sent us one. It's so long. Sometimes I forget it.
I can kind of remind y'all what
Can
it
you
is
pop it up?
if
Like,
you
can
want.
pop it up on the screen.
Where at, Keith? Where should I pop it
it's
up?
like right in here.
Oh,
R-
there it is.
RMPodcast at
Stroke it.
redmoonproductions.com.
There it is.
Mm.
Like Sean said.
So if you see something
stroke
interesting
it.
you think you would like us to talk about, send us an email. Yeah.
Hell yeah. RM Podcast at redmoonproductions.com. All right, let's move on to our
.com.
headlines this week, which happened to be from Mr. Neil Singleton. He added our biggest headline, which kind of dropped. I mean, it wasn't too long ago. It was like a
It's-
couple days
yeah,
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
It's not,
So
it's
I was
not
thinking
center roll.
it came right after our show last week, which always happens. But no, this actually was just only a few days old, and it happens to be something we've talked about on the show before.
Indeed.
But I never knew, understood. I never really understood the legality issues that were really behind theaters and studios and the ownership issues
Yeah.
there. But
I understand it a little
goes-
bit better now.
Yeah.
Now that it's gone.
Which is, well, that's what we're going to kind of discuss. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? But an old law was put into place a long time ago called the Paramount Consent Decree
From the 1940s.
from the 1940s, which actually
right
brought
around the time
about.
we're reviewing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
Man, we could have. This
I'll
could have
tell
been
you what.
timed more perfectly.
You're so smart.
Look at that. Well, because Paramount, which was one of the major five back then, along with the other major studios, like they did purchase and own their own theaters, but then they ran into the problem where they would only show the movies that they produced.
Right.
So it was kind of like causing like a monopoly effect where like if you didn't own a theater, the smaller movies and the studios that weren't big weren't getting money because they couldn't get their movies played anywhere. So they made this law that no theaters could not be owned by production studios. That way that it would be like a third party owned that would showcase every studio's film.
Which is so funny because we've brought this up on the show before about how ridiculous it is in this day and age that you wouldn't want to use that as kind of a benefit. But it actually now, thankfully, a federal judge has agreed with us, a federal judge in New York, and struck down this decree, basically saying that no, there's more than enough ways and more than enough options for studios to distribute their
the
films.
landscape of how like movies are distributed now anyways, especially now that we're seeing with like streaming and all of that.
Oh
with
yeah,
Corona.
internet's changed
It's
everything.
like the way everything is now is so different that it's like for a movie studio to own its own theater now, it's like they definitely are in the business to make money. So it's not like they're going to alienate all the other studios. Now I could see maybe them like charging a premium price to watch a movie that's not theirs, and then like you get their movie cheaper in their theater, like
or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
And
could
it may
see
be
maybe
the only
like
place
something
that you
like
can
that.
see it.
But like in Europe, like Universal and I forget who, there are a few studios that own theaters because that's not a law in Europe, obviously. So they do own a couple theaters over there, and they show the same movies over there that theaters show over here without discriminating. Because again, it's like you want to make money, so you want to have the movies people want to see in your theater, whether you made it or not.
Well, it's interesting to see also during this time period because of COVID and Corona, and the fact that right now what I think we're seeing is really, it's kind of more, would you say it's more bad news for theaters, or is this good news? Because at the end of the day, this is kind of knocking down the idea that theaters are a one-stop shop like they used to be.
It can be kind of bad news for me, like smaller theaters, like as far as like being bought out. But I mean, I think it will help keep theaters alive in general, in the fact that when you have
healthy competition,
when you have studios like Disney that have billions of dollars to buy theaters, it's like, well, they have the money to put into it, whereas some other smaller companies may not. So at least in that way, they're going to be preserving theaters. They're not going to die because, you know, Disney has the money to put into that. As opposed to, you know, something like Baxter Avenue, the theater like here that's locally, you know, with this shutdown, like they can't keep going forever. They don't have the money for that. And I don't want to see them go.
No, I don't.
And again, because Baxter Avenue is one of those theaters that do show independent films, and that's what a lot of people are afraid of with this. Is they're afraid, well, if big studios like Disney and Warner Brothers and Paramount start buying their own movies, they're never going to show those independent films. And I mean, I do think that is something to be nervous about, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they're going to completely shove those out.
I think like what Sean was saying, and Sean, feel free to elaborate. It's like, you know, talk about competition. Though.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, as long as you have patrons who are willing to clamor that they want a certain film or certain kind of, you know, movie to be shown, then a theater more than likely is going to oblige them and say, okay, well, if enough people want it, then we're going to have to bring it to our theater.
For the consumer, the more competition you have, that ends up ultimately driving prices into a more comfortable spot for the consumer. Because, I mean, with AMC being the largest one, they're kind of in a position where they can kind of set the price trend for movie tickets. As if there was so much more competition, eventually somebody's going to drive it down a little bit lower, and then they're going to have to compete. And we're going to be able to see movies cheaper. Hopefully, that's the only really good thing I'm seeing coming from it. But
and I've even thought too, because one of our biggest, I would say, arguments in the past have always been the fact that, you know, especially with other streaming services beginning in the game, you talk about Netflix and the fact that it's...
Well, they've been wanting to own
They've
their own
won
theater
it. They
for a while,
have one in Albuquerque, and it's just kind of like this question of we don't know what they're going to do with it. But for the longest time, because of this decree,
well, now they can
or
start
these
making
decrees,
Netflix theaters.
what if they saw it coming?
I think so. Something tells me that somehow they had a, you know, I don't know. They had their hand on this
I'm pretty
pulse.
confident that these theaters, even if they are owned by some of the big tech giants like Netflix and Amazon and stuff like, and Disney even, I think they're going to have to do like Keith said. They're going to have to show the movies from other studios, and they're doing that already. I mean, you can get on Amazon and you can watch plenty of content that's not theirs.
Yeah.
Right.
Netflix doesn't only show their original content. They have all kinds of other stuff on there. So I don't feel like the theaters will be any different.
Well, the more you have to show, like, the more people are going to be coming in. Like, it's like if you only show, like, okay, Paramount, if all they show are the movies they own,
they're going to have like 5 movies a year.
Yeah. It's like you're going to get the new Transformers, and who wants that? It's like
right.
you have to,
yeah.
It's like you have to show some of the competition, because it's like if you don't show the new Fast and the Furious movie in your theater, it's like that's all kinds of money you're not going to make.
I think it's also interesting because in the same way they can exclude, I think, other theaters from having certain kind of, you know, properties and such as Fast and the Furious. What if they're like, look, no, we want it in our Paramount theaters only for so long and for a month, and that's exclusive, and that's the only place you can go see it.
Now, they could do something like that. But
I think, again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think, again, like you're saying, Sean, it breeds competition.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's like what it ultimately does is even if a Paramount comes out with a theater that only shows Paramount films, the great thing about it is if they want a theater to last and actually be profitable, then they're going to have to produce films
Yeah.
that people want to see more than just one film
Oh,
in
yeah.
that theater.
Yep.
And so for me, I'm sitting here thinking, if you have 5 or 6 theaters pop up in your area, and one's a Paramount, and one's a Netflix, and one's an Amazon
well,
theater.
that's the other problem.
What, you think it's just because there's going to be too many theaters?
Not that there'd be too many theaters, is that there's not going to be enough. Like,
That's
look
what
at,
I was
look,
getting
look at
ready
the
to
local
say.
Yes.
theaters.
Yeah.
And people are afraid that if Paramount decides they're only going to show Paramount movies at Paramount theaters,
Yeah.
and you don't have a Paramount theater
There's
in
only
your
50
area,
of them in the country,
like if
then-
there's only 50 in the country, and there's not one anywhere near you, then you can't see
and
Paramount movies.
that
think,
that doesn't make any business sense.
Yeah, exactly,
Because what they're going to
exactly.
do is they're going to say, well, we obviously want more than just the 50 people. It may be like only in those cities where we have
Yeah.
Paramount theaters.
That's why I think
you're only going to be able to see it there.
That's why I think it would be foolish for for any studio to only show their movies in their theaters. Like, people are afraid of that, but it's like, I,
mean,
don't think they would go that route
Yeah.
because they know.
I wouldn't.
It's
if-
taken AMC decades to have the amount of theaters that they have to reach
Yes.
across the country.
Yeah.
And I feel like if this was something that sparked pretty quickly, it's going to take Paramount or Netflix or Amazon, it's going to take them just as long to have a theater or 2 or 3
But-
in every city for people to actually go to.
But the question is, it's like if AMC or Cinemark or someone is
It's bought
hemorrhaging
out.
money,
They can be
hemorrhaging money,
purchased by
then
somebody,
they
yeah.
can
sound like
easily.
Joe Biden now.
I know.
Gosh.
I can't hear myself. Hemorrhaging
money.
monies. But no, it's like, yeah, if they can't actually, stay up to on top of, their checkbook, then all of a sudden they can, hey, we'll sell it to Netflix, we'll sell it to Paramount, or
true.
20th Century Disney, and it's like,
Yeah.
but the
That was actually a headline that Neil sent us. I know I texted it
the
to
20th
you.
Century
I
Television.
saw it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw
yeah.
it late
Why-
or early this
well, I'm
morning.
It was
sorry,
too
it's
late to get it
20th
in the lineup for
20th
tonight's
television.
show.
Why don't they call it
Yeah, I know.
20th Century Television?
It's
Why is
just
it just 20th Television?
Because it's the-
television.
it's the
'Cause it's
20
2020.
listen,
That's why.
It's the 20th.
COVID 2020.
Disney now owns the 20th television ever made. Okay,
Yeah.
it's their 20th.
I really thought
television.
that was stupid. I'm like, nobody understands if you don't throw century in there.
But the
Just
thing is,
20th television.
It's already dated because here we are in the 21st century, and it's 20th century movies.
That's
It's like
true.
either way, it's like without the Fox name, it's like it's just kind of weird either way. And I know
Yeah.
they don't want to keep that because
Yeah.
it's owned by Disney now.
Well,
they're
of course
just
not, yeah.
they're just dropping the Fox.
Fox.
But
Yeah.
it's like just 20th century films or 20th century
Yes.
television. It's like, well, now we're watching movies from a decade ago. So I
have
don't
no
know.
idea.
The
I
whole
just-
thing's kind of weird. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
I don't
I
care.
thought it was just stupid.
Like whatever they want to
Yeah.
name it, that's fine. I don't care. But
Anyways,
it's the same
back
thing weird.
back to the Paramount consent decree. I do think this is going to open up and breed more competition.
Yeah.
And I ultimately think that even for the theaters or I would say, or not theaters, the studios / the newcomers to the block, the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Apple TV Plus even.
Yeah.
It's like if they do find ways to have, I think you'll see, markets pop up in the bigger cities and they'll slowly kind of do, little by little take over here and there.
Yeah.
You're still going to have your indie mom and pop theaters.
Yeah.
And you're still going to have, I think, your megaplexes where there's tons of different choices. I don't think they're going to alienate people from seeing their film, maybe one particular, but ultimately I think it's also going to breed the studios to have to produce not only more films but better quality films to try to compete with either other studios and also to compete for you to come to their theater and
Yeah.
watch more than just one movie per month.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they want you to keep coming back and keep coming.
It'd be awesome if Netflix
You know-
would, if they had theaters like that, they show every other movie at the normal price. But if you're a Netflix subscriber, then you can watch their original movies for $5.
Yeah.
Or something,
or
like
even
a reduced
free or
price.
something. Yeah,
I don't think they would do free.
they wouldn't. They would.
But still,
Because
at a lower
we
cost.
already know Disney
Yeah.
Plus isn't doing that with Mulan.
Yeah.
And yeah, people are just loving that.
Yeah.
But
It
no,
is backfiring.
it is. Thank God it is, and it deserves to because they're freaking money grubbing whores.
Oh, I know.
Screw Disney.
I know.
Okay? It's like, come on, everybody
Walt
pays
be
for
rolling
this.
over in his grave.
It's ridiculous, and not only
Yep.
that, but to do it with a movie that was already just kind of borderline, like on whether it was going to be popular or not.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why would you all do that? You shot
What is
yourself
it
in the
about
foot.
2020 though, man? 2020's ushered in the VOD thing. It's ushered in this fight between the studios and the theaters, and now we got this.
That's
like 2020
honestly
sucks.
I
Corona,
do
man.
think
Corona's
I-
screwing with people's heads.
I truly do think that part of this judge's decision is based on the fact that they've seen how theaters are not the go-to anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're seeing these other channels pop up. And I don't think this is a bad thing for theaters. Again, it's like any business, adapt or die. And I think theaters are going to have to do the same thing here, just like they did with their
Well,
deal with Paramount.
Listen, this will also more easily allow studios to release movies in theaters and VOD at the same time. If Paramount owns its own theater, they can say, okay, well, we're going to put this in our theaters for a couple weeks and then put it on demand like 3 weeks after it's in theaters. And there's nobody to throw a fit about because they own the theater.
Right.
So they can't say, you know.
That's a good point. Yeah. 17 days is what they're the minimum right now, supposedly. So,
and I'm okay with, I think, again, it's opening up more possibilities, and still the theaters are getting, money off the fact that they're being streamed. They can't, beat that. And I think that theaters are willing to kind of negotiate this unsettled ground before, because they're facing unprecedented measures, but also the fact that they're trying to figure out ways that they can adapt and they can build on what their future is going to be, which I think is still going to be a clear and bright future. I think theaters are here to stick around. They'll always be here to stick around, even if they're not the favorite way of seeing movies. I think you're still going to have people
we've
who
touted
want to go.
the movie theater
Like
experience.
drive-ins.
Like what?
Said like drive-ins.
Drive-ins. Yeah. Hey, I
they
would
brought
love
them
to go to a
I love-
drive-in.
I love drive. Well, there's still drive-ins that
Yeah.
exist.
I
mean,
think
they're
Red
not-
Moon needs to go to the drive-in when they
that
open
would be-
back
that
up.
would be
I
fun.
think
Well, they
we should
already
do it.
are.
There are some
my
that are
parents
open.
went last weekend.
Oh, did the one in
And
Oldham
they-
County finally
Georgetown
open back up?
or
Well, no,
I think it's
actually,
Oldham County.
there's
That's
one
the
in-
closest one.
Oh,
okay,
okay.
that's
Yeah.
got to be what it is.
Okay.
then.
I think.
But they
We
went
need to
and
do
they
a Red
saw
Moon
it because
field
it was
trip.
like
It was that or LaGrange. I'm not sure which one.
It was
There's one in
Goonies.
Georgetown. I
They
know
were-
that.
They were showing Goonies and
that would-
what
Oh
was the
my
other one?
God.
Oh, I can't remember. But my mom.
I really wish
Flash,
Kenwood
on
still-
one screen was Flashdance and
Okay, I never liked that one.
Yeah.
and Footloose.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you told us.
And
about
then the
this,
other one was
yeah.
Goonies, and I forget the other.
Footloose and Dirty Dancing. I might have.
Yeah.
I might have bit.
Actually, no, I
might
think
have went
that.
to do
I
that
think
one.
that's what it was.
Flashdance sucked.
I think that it was. It was Footloose and
Dirty
Dirty
Dancing.
Dancing.
Now,
Okay.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I love drive-ins, but again, they're still around. They haven't completely died, but they're definitely nowhere near as widespread as they were. So
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is I think ultimately you get, we've seen that you get better quality at an actual theater.
Oh,
that puts the money back into its
Surround
experience.
sound and 4K projection.
Right.
I mean, come
And
on.
drive-in is an experience in and of itself. With just the
that's for
It's
like
nostalgia.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I do love going to a drive-in, but it's just a different type of experience.
Swatting the mosquitoes off your neck
Yeah.
while you're trying to watch a movie out
and
in
if
the
that's
heat.
the other thing,
Oh,
if it's
yeah.
hot and humid and
Something
muggy, ugh,
Yeah.
it's just terrible.
But even the theaters that show the indie films, like I really enjoy. I like the fact that we had to go to Baxter to watch The Lighthouse.
Oh, I did too.
Like, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy, and I think there's a lot of people out there that like that theater experience. They like having to kind of go to different
art house
theaters.
theater,
The
yeah.
art house theater that's showing only a certain. And I hope that doesn't fade away or get lost in the theaters that have 20 and 30
I don't think it
auditoriums.
would.
Like I don't.
I think big companies still know, because I mean they still make I mean, granted Fox Searchlight's not a thing anymore, but they still have like companies like Blumhouse that make smaller independent films that I think would definitely like make negotiations with other companies. And I mean, you have big companies that know that while the action
You
films
still
are
have an
their,
audience
while
for
the
that,
action films are their bread and butter, like they still want those art house films for like
Yes.
Oscar purposes.
Yeah.
So I think they'll still
Well, I
showcase
think
certain
even
stuff
even
like
beyond
that.
that, I think you still have. I mean, it's like the whole buy local. It's like on an average day, if you got to go pick up something from the store, it's like I got to run to Walmart real quick and grab this. But if I have a chance and I have the ability to shop around local, I'm going to the local mom and pop shop because I want to support my local
Especially
community.
now.
Especially now. And I've hated seeing the mom and pop shops closing
I
across
shop
the
at the
country.
Quick Stop down the street from my house all the time.
Quick Stop.
It
That's
is. It's Quick
Get
Stop.
shot
Somebody
at
got
the
shot
Quick
there,
Stop.
but you know.
Somebody got shot.
But I still shop there. I love the people in there. They're hilarious. That's actually the same guy every time I go in, but he's awesome. So,
But the thing is I do think I agree with Keith. I think you've got this community that builds around those types of theaters where it's like and I've actually been disappointed with Baxter because they have been bought out by people who not only they'll just show some of the bigger indie films, but most of the time they stopped doing like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and
some
all
of
these
the
other
more unique stuff they used to do.
yes, and those were the little nuanced things that I thought really built the community around, just that culture, and I like to celebrate, and it's like. I think I just read recently about Napoleon Dynamite, and they still have like showings in Idaho.
Oh man!
And or was it Idaho where they shot that? I forget. No, what's where's Brigham Young? I forget the
That's in
Mormon country.
It's in like Utah, isn't it?
Utah.
Yeah.
Is it Utah? Which one is Mormon country? There's a
I have
state
no
that's like,
idea.
I forget.
I thought it was
forget.
Utah.
It's got. I think it is
it's Utah.
I think it's
Yeah.
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Cornhuskers.
No.
No, but the thing is they still have where they regularly show that film.
Well, they're
Yeah.
proud of that film.
And they're proud of it because
I mean,
it was
I would
filmed
be
there.
too. It's hilarious.
It is. It's a funny movie. Stupid. But yeah, I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think you're still going to have
That's
these.
still that town, and I don't even remember the name of that town either. But they show Troll 2 every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nilbog.
Yeah.
where they shot.
where they shot. Yeah, where they shot it. And I love that. I'd love to go there and watch it one day.
Well,
Oh
I'm
my
going to be the
God.
first
Hilarious.
one
Be terrifying.
to sign a petition that whoever the first theater is that opens back up around here, we have a Nil Breen.
Nil Breen.
Nil Breen-a-thon, okay? That's what I want.
That would be
Okay.
hilarious.
I want that. All right, guys. I think are we done with this topic? I think we're ready to
Yeah.
move on to
I mean,
our
I
unique
suppo-
weekly
I
segment.
suppose.
Well, then let's hit that open.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
That never gets old.
It never does. Thank you, Aaron, for that intro.
Mm.
Story time.
Mm.
I wish. Well, I'd give her a shout out and like throw up her TikTok page or
Aaron
something.
Boyd.
She always posts these TikTok videos.
She's all
She's gonna get
over the
banned.
TikTok.
I
yeah.
know Trump's
Yeah.
putting it down.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm going to shoot you like a rabid dog."
Said if an American company, if an American company don't buy it, it's done.
Well, Microsoft's putting it in, and
Yeah.
come on, when was Microsoft?
I know
cool? Since Bill Gates.
It's gonna be TikTok Edge.
The moment,
They're gonna turn it into TikTok Edge.
the moment Microsoft buys TikTok, it's dead. It's gonna die. It'll be like the Zune.
Well,
Soon.
It'll be gone.
the moment you come
Almost
out
bought
with
one of those.
I'm sorry, but when you come out with a media player that's brown
Yeah.
and looks like shit,
Like a brick. It doesn't look like it looks like
Come on.
a brick made of crap.
Yeah,
So.
it looked like the bricks they eat on the freaking what's the train that goes around the world? What is that? The Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Ever seen that? The brick of protein crap that they
Protein
eat.
brick.
it looks like like you took like one of them fudge ice cream bars and made.
It's like here, put headphones in this.
Yeah, they'll
This
melt
is not
right in.
this is not our story time segment, by the way.
But it is funny because
is.
I think it's Erin always puts her husband on there.
Yeah.
And I ain't gonna lie, man, some of the stuff she does.
Here's the
is-
thing.
it's funny, but
It's-
I know
it's-
he hates it.
Like
but it's,
she has a lot of
it's
TikTok
funny.
videos. The ones I find to actually be hilarious are the ones that include Josh because
Yes.
you could tell he does
doesn't
not
wanna be on
He
there.
does not
Yep.
want to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
He-
It's hilarious.
And I'm not gonna lie, having worked with him on
Uh,
Margaret's Monsters,
yeah.
which he did an incredible job,
yeah.
and turned out to be the best. Which I mean, he's married to her, so it worked out. But it
Yeah.
was just he turned out to be a great
chemistry was
character,
perfect, yeah.
and the chemistry was fantastic. But then it was funny because it's like you see him in these videos where he's just himself. it's so.
He's like,
much
leave
better.
me alone.
But no, our story time segment actually revolves around something odd that happened to Keith this past
Well,
week.
I told Sean, like,
Yeah,
I
let's
thought
see
maybe
if,
we could title it like because we were talking to Sean. And
I
Sean's
came up
had-
with a title. I don't know if it's.
Oh,
If
well,
it,
I thought maybe like
works.
crazy
We
neighbors
changed it.
because
Oh,
Sean has his story about his neighbor, and to be fair, you have a story
Yes.
about your neighbor when you lived at your parents.
Brian,
So
Brian,
the
my
one-
crazy neighbor.
when you lived at your parents, shooting in the corner.
Yes!
So I was like, so we all have crazy neighbor
Let's do
stories.
that one.
So the way this started is
Okay, so the lower's gonna be wrong.
it's wrong. We're
It
sorry.
says random encounters,
It's actually crazy neighbor.
but it's crazy neighbors. But I'm still gonna put it up there for people to see.
go ahead
so they can
story
see the
time
production
segment.
value.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
we want people to know how fly we are.
So Keith, you go ahead. Start out with your story.
So, this was Sunday night. Yeah, I worked. I was at my job, and I didn't get off till late, so I didn't get home till about midnight. And I pull in and go in the house, and it's really late. I hadn't eaten all day because we were busy at work. So I ordered a pizza from Papa John's because they were the only place open. Like
Which
that.
I'm kind of surprised
Yeah.
by.
Yeah,
That it was
I was
that
shocked
late.
too.
Yeah.
I thought I thought I was going to have to go back out and get McDonald's if I wanted something.
Well, Papa Andy's trying to close
But,
everything
yeah.
down by
Oh, I
10.
know.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
curfew, baby.
Walmart closes at 8:30 now.
yeah, it's crazy.
What the
So
hell about? I
ridiculous.
mean, come
So
on.
I order this pizza and I'm waiting for it, and about 20 minutes go by, and I hear a knock on the door, and I'm thinking, oh, that because it said it was going to be 40, which I don't know why, because I don't know who else was ordering a pizza at midnight.
That's just Papa John's normal.
But it was like
That's their average.
It's like 40 minutes, and I was like, okay, so it's 20, and I was like, oh, they got here fast.
Shaq's back there making it himself. Okay.
So I go to the door, and I can see through the door. It's not the pizza man, because there's some guy sitting on my stoop. So I slowly open it just to see what's going on, because I'm like, this is not the pizza guy like I thought. And I open the door, and this guy looks at me, and he's got his hand held like to his chest, and there's just blood like pouring down, like not pouring, but it's his hand's bloody, and it's already kind of congealed at that point. But you could tell that it won't stop bleeding.
Oh my!
And he's sitting there, he's like, "Hey man, can you call the cops and an ambulance?" He said. And it was one of my neighbors. I won't specify which one. Not that anybody knows where I live, but still, he was just like, he cut me, and it won't stop bleeding. And the guy wasn't one of my neighbors. The guy that cut him was one of my neighbors. And I was sitting here thinking, that's weird, because this guy has never had any incident. Like he's been fine. Mm-hmm. So to think that he cut this guy was just like, this is bizarre. So I did call the police and the ambulance, and I'm on the phone with 911, and the lady's walking through it with me, and she's like, all right, how old is the gentleman, and how bad is it bleeding? Is it squirting or gushing? And well, they need that information.
It's a geyser, man. It's a geyser.
They hear the guy in the background and he's drunk as a skunk. He's just way off, and he's like, I don't want to die. I won't stop bleeding. And I'm looking at him, and I can tell that it's mostly congealed, and yes, it's still bleeding, but it's not bad enough for him to die. But I can tell he's drunk and scared because he can't get it to stop, and he's like, I don't want to die, man. I don't want to die. And I'm like, yeah, he's really scared, and it won't stop bleeding. He said this guy cut him, and he said, man, we were both drinking and we were arguing about something, and then he got his switchblade out, and I thought he was going to stab me, so I grabbed it. And
my gosh.
So I think it was just a case of them just being really drunk and stupid, and the guy got his switchblade out, waving it around, and the guy just was freaked out and grabbed
the blade,
and cut himself because they went and they talked to my neighbor too, and nothing happened there. They carted this guy off in the ambulance, and he's got blood on my stoop, and I'm pulling out the water hose with this bottle of bleach, pouring on my stoop, spraying it, and the pizza guy finally shows up while I'm spraying
blood off the porch,
stoop, and I'm it's supposed to be a contactless delivery, so I'm like, can you put it on the back stoop? I apologize, like this, and I told him the story, and this guy's like, "That's crazy." And I'm like, "I know, dude." I'm like,
Papa John's guy stuck around for that.
Yeah. I'm like, now he has a great story to go back and tell the people at Papa John's, dude. I just delivered this pizza. This guy's spraying blood off his front porch.
Dude's like, if that address comes up again, I ain't going. Yeah, that's what he's saying.
And I'm sitting here like I've not had any incident from my neighbors, and it's usually everybody around there's been really nice. And again, I haven't had anything since then. In fact, I haven't even seen that guy at the house since then, so I'm sure he went into hiding, he's embarrassed.
Oh wow!
And I'm sitting here thinking here it is 1 o'clock in the morning, and this guy's just bleeding on my front stoop, and I'm sitting here I just wanted a pizza.
Yeah.
Well, you got more than a pizza.
Why didn't his buddy call 911 for him?
Well, I guess because he got scared and they were drunk, because he was like, yeah, he wouldn't even let me leave the house at first, and then when he finally did let me leave, all he cared about was cleaning the blood off his floor. But see, here's the thing.
I kind of get that.
Sounds familiar.
They were, here's the thing. They had
no comment.
They were working on his back deck since noon. So they were drinking since noon, and it was midnight. So I know they had to have been completely wasted.
They were
wasted. So I was just like, this is the craziest thing that's happened to me since I moved in. And
that was always going to be my question. Is it's welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know what the hell to expect when that happens. It's who
well,
knows?
Granted, I've been in the house almost 2 years, so I'm but I'm just okay.
Yeah, it's kind of well, this is all right. Now I know what's around me. But I mean, we're not done yet. Crazy neighbors.
No.
Sean, you have an incident?
Yeah, I had a couple crazy neighbors for about 2 or 3 months. It seemed like it went on, but we had we lived kind of out in the country in a rural area, and there's not a lot that goes on back there. It was really quiet, but for maybe a month or two, one of the neighbors of mine that lives kind of up on top of the ridge behind my house, he would come out late at night, and I thought he was drunk, but he would be out yelling, and he'd be cussing and yelling at somebody, and I didn't know who he was yelling at, but he would just be he'd randomly just yell F you, and then he would say shut the F up. He would just yell, and me and my wife would just lay in bed with our bedroom window open, and just laugh sometimes because he would be out there at 11, 12 o'clock at night just
Can't help it.
yelling.
Entertainment.
And so then it turned into him going out and yelling and firing a gun in the air.
That's a little much.
And so we started to get kind of upset about that. So 2 or 3 times I had to call the sheriff, and they would come out and they'd go up there. I could see their lights pulling on the road, and I'd see them driving up the hill, see their lights flashing through the woods. And then sure enough, they'd come back down about 15 or 20 minutes later. And
did they ever call and like tell you like
one time they called and said, yeah, we just wanted to let you know the guy was up there. We told him he needed to calm down, but he was firing a gun on his own property. There's nothing illegal about that. And,
Bullitt
you know, we
County?
gave him a warning. It's Nelson County.
Nelson
We
County.
gave him a warning, yada, yada. Okay, so about another 2 or 3 weeks go by, and he's out there. He's at it again. And he starts shooting, and this time he fires not in the air, but he fires through the trees, like right behind my house. I could hear his
Wow.
rounds hitting branches and stuff.
Yeah.
And my kids are asleep in the other room. Both of their walls face this guy's property. So if he fired a shot and it hit one of my walls, it would come through and probably could hit one of my kids. So I'm getting pretty pissed, and I've got my gun, and I'm ready to walk over there and give him a what for. And so Amelia says, Amelia says,
I'm gonna give him a
Amelia,
whooper.
Amelia says you need to call the police or whatever. So I go out and stand on the front porch, and I've got the phone in my hand, and I hear him out there cussing, and then every 3 or 4 minutes he'd fire a shot, and I'm just like, I'm gonna give him a few more minutes, and if he doesn't simmer down, I'm going over there. And after I call the police, but I'm gonna drive up there. And so I've got another neighbor that lives behind me that raises hound dogs, and he's got a kennel full of them out there. And yeah, they make a hell of a lot of noise at night, but we had gotten used to it. But they're all night long. These, hunting dogs that he
Yeah.
raises, expensive dogs. He sells them. And so
Oh,
I hear the
no.
dogs barking. I hear gunshots going off, and then I hear a gunshot go off, and then I hear I hear the dogs yelping, and then I hear 3 or 4 more shots. I'm on the phone with the police. No more dogs barking.
Oh,
They
no.
just got silent, and I'm like, that's not them. Them damn things bark all night. So I called the police, had them over there. They came to the house, came up on the front porch. The guy was just the deputy. Now he's the sheriff. But he came up on the porch, and he says, is it the guy up there? I said, yeah, same guy I've called on twice already before. He's out there shooting every direction, and I'm pretty sure that he went back there and shot this guy's dogs. So
Oh,
they go
no.
up there, and I hear the police yelling, drop the gun, drop the effing gun. And I hear him yelling back at them, and they're getting, I can hear the car doors shutting. They're getting out. They're going after him. And I can see their flashlights bouncing, like they're running through the woods after the guy. And sure enough, they found him. He was actually walking on his way back to his house to reload his shotgun.
Oh,
But he had walked over
Oh,
and jumped
snap.
over the other guy's fence, and he had shot every one of the dogs point blank in their kennel.
Oh my!
All but one
gosh.
that hid around behind a doghouse, and he was going to reload to get the other one. So he ended up going to jail, and he got arrested. He got all of his guns got confiscated, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it probably wasn't maybe 2 or 3 months he was out, and he's still there now. But the sheriff told me that he was on medication, and that if he went off his medication, he was nuts. And so that's what happened was there would be a couple of nights that he would forget to take it or
Oh my
purposefully
gosh.
not take it, and he would lose his crap, and he'd go out there and shoot. And the guy told the police that the dogs were talking to him, and they wouldn't quit talking
Now,
to
how
him.
in the hell are you going to be
So,
on medication
he was
and
nuts.
have guns?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
So
Yeah.
all of that went down, and then it probably wasn't a week after all of that stuff went down. Some crazy kid that lives down the highway from us or whatever, but his property. He was going in the woods and shooting bottles of tannerite, whatever.
Yeah, I know
Shooting these
yeah.
explosives
Oh my
and blowing them
gosh.
up, and he almost burned the freaking woods down.
Oh.
And the FBI ended up going after him because he was searching. I know a guy that works for Washington County Schools, and that's where this kid went to school, and he told us that the FBI came and looked through the computer that the kid used at school because he was Googling school shootings and how to pull off a school shooting.
Wow.
And so the FBI was trying to trace him down, but for all we know, 2 barns burned down in the area, and they were 100% sure that
was
he
him.
lit the barns on fire. He was like a pyromaniac.
gosh,
so we had like
man.
all this happen in about 4 months' time, and it put us like
On edge.
It put us on edge.
Why the hell did we move
yeah,
here?
it was crazy. But everything's been calm since. But you want to talk about like a run of crazy freaking neighbors? Like we had
That's
it
it.
coming from all sides, and then the people behind us that their dogs were killed.
Yeah.
Like they were on edge too, to the point where they were calling me and saying, "What kind of gun you got? Like, come up here and show us how to work a
because
gun."
I'm sitting there,
Like,
my dogs are dead.
they
For
were-
one,
yeah.
I don't know. That guy would not have gotten out.
Oh, yeah, he was like, if
in
he
as
comes
much
over my
time as
fence
he-
again, I'll kill him. I'll kill him. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I'll come up and help. But I mean,
Yeah.
it was literally like to the point where if somebody shoots a gun in the area, like target practice, my neighbor will text me and be like, "Is that you? Are you shooting
Yeah.
targets in your yard or whatever?" And I'll say no. And I mean, everybody's freaked out about it. But it's been a while, and it's calmed down since then. But yeah, we got some schizo neighbors living around there,
No
out
doubt.
out in the sticks.
Out in the sticks, man.
So
I'm
what's your
telling you,
story?
bringing back the country boys. Mine honestly is not nearly as wild as it probably would have been wild before those experiences, but I probably should have went first because it's not that crazy. But it was back in my 8th grade year of middle school, and I actually
Not your 8th grade year of high school.
well, not my no. That was a different year.
I like how you said my 8th
Uh,
grade year of middle
school.
school.
That was 8th grade year of high school was a little bit later down the road. No, so I think it was towards the end of the year because it was right before summer, and because the end of the year school testing was going on, and this neighbor had always been a character anyway. We always kind of my mom and dad had given nicknames to each of our neighbors, and this guy was always out tanning, and he'd always he was kind of like the classic.
Did they call him Tanner?
No, that would have been like Danny Tanner. You can't do that. No, but he ended up like always sitting out bathing in the sun,
Really?
and we'd always have these like new women over. I swear it was like every single. It was like a rotation of every few months. There'd be a new one.
Oh, wow.
And he'd always have these arguments with these women. Like every new one that would come around, I guess, was just like he met them at a bar or something, bring them home. They'd stay for a little while, and it was like, oh, there's another one. Well, we started nicknaming him Sonny because he was always out in the sun. So we called him Sonny. He was always bringing home a new broad every few months. And they would get out. They finally had this one that would stick around. She stuck around because he had some kids and stuff, and she was, I guess, going to be the mama. But she stuck around for a good while, and they would get into these arguments and these fights. And I mean, they did not care, if they were sitting there in the kitchen and you could hear it, and their door was wide open. And then of course she'd funnel out into the backyard, and he'd follow her, yelling at her while she'd get in her car and leave. So we always were just kind of, entertained by it, if anything, just because it's like, well, he's at it again.
The Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, there goes Sonny again. There's his new broad. Well, this one night, I'm sitting there. I'm in bed already. I'm passed out. I'm asleep. And then I hear these gunshots. So, like, I get up and, like, out of my bed, and, like, I go over to the window. And I'm up on the second floor, and I look out, and all of a sudden I see lights on at, like, Sonny's place. And then all of a sudden, like, my sister comes, like, barging into the door, and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know, Sonny's over there off shooting a gun. So like we run out and we go over to my brother's room, and he didn't even come get us. He's just looking out his window. So like he's also just like, what's going on? So we're sitting there, and then the next thing we know, we hear my dad at the bottom of the steps, and he's like, hey, get down here, all y'all, get down here. So he already sees that we're up. So we all rush down into the basement. My dad calls the cops, and we're sitting there. He's still firing off these guns. And then sure enough, he's like over in the corner of, like, my mom was just freaking out, telling us, get away from the windows. Don't even be by the windows. Like, you need to get over here. Like, we're in the basement like it's a tornado.
Yeah.
I guess because stray bullets don't go in the basement. So we're just sitting there, like, away from the window, and we hear him, like, sitting there, and he's like, bark again. Bark again. I said bark again. And he's shooting, and there's no dog barking. I don't know what's going on. There's nothing going on. And eventually we hear, like, it kind of get quiet, and then we start hearing these cops come up, and they're like, put the gun down, put the gun down. And, they're yelling, and then all of a sudden, like, we kind of come back upstairs, and we're looking out the window, and sure enough, they got cops surrounded, like, in our, there's this little ditch behind our house. There's, like, 2-3 cops there. There's some in the front, and, like, they hop the fence, and they, like, they rush them, and they, like, throw them down on the ground.
Yeah.
They handcuff them, And so we're just sitting here like never in the wildest dreams would have thought like this neighbor was going to lose it that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some fights and he could raise his temper, but we never thought like he's getting to the point where he's pulling out a gun. So, I mean, guy was always friendly with us. Anytime he saw us outside, backyard playing or something, like, wave and give us the typical, but never said really too much to us. And then after that incident, it was like he was probably gone for about a week or two. Back in the house, never again heard anything from him. Not a peep. No more women problems. Nothing.
Wow.
And it was just simple. It was like after that, it was like, yeah, I guess he was done.
That's all he needed, huh?
He just needed that one outburst.
Wow.
But it was just I'm sitting here freaking out and like right before school, the next day.
So there was no dog?
No, there was no dog. There was one dog down the 2-3 houses down.
Yeah.
So, but he was literally shooting. Like you could see the muzzle flash, and he was shooting at the corner of his house. Like
At the ground? Or?
At the ground.
Yeah.
And it was like we had no idea what the hell he was doing. And the dogs weren't barking.
Yeah.
It was the same thing. There was this house 2-3 doors down that, they had these 2 dogs that would always be barking in the middle of the night. My parents were the same way. They got used to it.
Used to it, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. Sonny just had it, and he wasn't going to do any more.
Sonny came home.
Sonny That's a perfect way to describe it. But no doubt we've all got our own crazy neighbors that we got to tend to. I've got one now I can't handle. I kind of already alluded to it, Brian. I don't know what the hell
They
I'm going to do with
mentioned your
him.
generator neighbors. They said,
Oh,
they were pretty bad,
yes. Oh, I
The
forgot.
the squatters that stole everybody's.
Oh no,
electric.
they stole. They would take extension cords and go plug it into other people's houses.
Yeah.
And steal energy.
They
off
was on
of
your
them.
front porch, weren't they?
They're-
Charging their phones or something?
One came by to charge her phone, and I let her. And after about an hour, I was just like, "Hey, I'm about to leave. I need you to get out of here." And she left.
Yeah.
I will say that, but
You think so? She probably came back and finished charging. it.
she probably did.
She was
but
like, I got 1 bar left.
I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it full charged. But no, the squatters were. Oh gosh. And now we thankfully, like kind of like your neighbors. I know you all text back and forth, Sean, but it's nice because we have like a neighborhood group. So we all are in that group, and people will post if like, hey, lock your doors. Somebody broke into my car last night. A bunch of teenagers running around, and people post pictures of security cams and whatnot. So it's nice to have that community around the collective good, coming to defeat the crazy neighbors, because God knows we've all encountered.
Everybody's got them.
Yep. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it this week for our show.
Yeah.
As always, yes, we've already spoken it once, but we can speak it again. That's right. You can email us at Red Moon Pro. Oh, gosh, I screwed it up.
Red Moon Pro.
I didn't get all the way through it. RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Amen.
Anybody else?
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
That's right.
Man, I say it like it's a question.
Well,
Like,
Keith,
are you
do you
sure?
got an answer?
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
That's right.
Man.
Oh, we're getting ready for our lake trip this week, but we will be returning next week, guys. That's right. Back here on the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all for joining us. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Keith Cheatham.
so until next time,
We'll be here.
yeah, we'll see you right here. That's right.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.